Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the school board meeting for April 7th, 2020. If you would like to view this meeting in Spanish, please follow the link listed below. The board will be respecting recent orders from the Governor of California, the Health Officer of the County of Riverside, and guidelines of the Centers for Disease Control related to maintaining public health and safety at this time. Consistent with these orders and guidelines, this meeting will be held online only, and there will be no physical meeting location open to the public. The board encourages members of the public to join the meeting electronically. In order to submit your public comments electronically, please refer to the link at the bottom of the screen. Public comments will be accepted until the board reconvenes the meeting in open session at 5:30 p.m. At this point in time, I'm going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to ask for a roll call to determine quorum. Mr. Hunt? Mr. Hunt?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. Thank you.
Mr. Lee?
Here.
Dr. Farouk?
Here.
Mrs. Lock-Dawson?
Here.
I've established a quorum, and now I'm asking for public participation on closed session matters. Oh, I'm sorry. And Freddie Hodnett.
I've added Freddie to your shopping list.
Mr. Hodnett?
Mrs. Alavi, this is David Hanson. I don't think Freddie's going to join us until the 5:30 start time for open session.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there any public participation on closed session matters?
No, there is not, Mrs. Alavi.
Okay, in that case, I will be adjourning at this point to closed session, and we will be returning at 5:30 p.m. Thank you. Every time I do that, it says the host has stopped it.
This is Kathy Holmes. Can you hear and see me?
I can hear you, Kathy. It's Brent.
Mute. And start video. Cannot start video. Fail to start the video camera. Please select another video camera in settings.
Start your video because the host has stopped it. Hello, is everybody here for the meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Good evening and welcome to the board meeting for April 7th.
Can you hear all that, Dr. Jansen?
Muting to me. It's not working. Okay. We're having some technical difficulties on our end. I'm really sorry. Good evening and welcome to the board meeting for April 7th, 2020. If you would like to view this meeting in Spanish, please follow the link listed below. The board will be respecting recent orders from the Governor of California, the health officer of the County of Riverside, and guidelines of the Centers for Disease Control related to maintaining public health and safety at this time. Consistent with these orders and guidelines, this meeting will be held online only, and there will be no physical meeting location open to the public. The board encourages members of the public to join the meeting electronically. In order to submit your public comments electronically, please refer to the link at the bottom of the screen. Public comments will be accepted until the board reconvenes the meeting in open session at 5:45 p.m. I would now like to introduce Mr. Sergio San Martin, who will repeat this message in Spanish.
Thank you, President Alvey. Muy buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la reunión de la Junta de Educación del 7 de abril del 2020. Si gustan ver esta reunión en español, sigan el enlace de abajo en la descripción. La Junta respetará las recientes órdenes del gobernador de California, el oficial de salud del condado de Riverside, las órdenes del Centro de Control de Enfermedades. Esto es en relación con el mantenimiento de la salud y la seguridad pública. De acuerdo con estas órdenes y guías, esta reunión se llevará a cabo solo en transmisión en línea y no habrá un lugar físico de reunión abierto al público. Les recomendamos a los miembros del público que se una a la reunión electrónicamente. Para presentar sus comentarios públicos, siga el enlace de parte de abajo de la pantalla. Se aceptarán los comentarios públicos hasta que la Junta se vuelva a convocar durante la sesión abierta a las 5:30 de la tarde, que es en este momento. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Mr. San Martin. We will now reconvene open session, and I'm going to begin by calling a roll call. Mr. Hunt, Mr. Hunt, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Mr. Lee,
Here.
Dr. Farouk,
Here.
Mrs. Locke Dawson,
Here.
and Mr. Hudnett.
Here.
Very good. Then we are all here and we have a quorum. At this time, I would like to introduce Superintendent David Hanson, who will report out to the public about a closed session item. Dr. Hanson?
Thank you, Madam President Alvey. The board did take action in closed session on appointing a new chief academic officer. You know that, many of you know that we are losing a longtime employee, Lynn Carmonday, who's been serving in that role for the last 6 years, as she has been appointed as the new superintendent in the Upland Unified School District. And this evening in closed session, the board took action to appoint to this new position starting July 1, Mrs. Renee Hill. Let me just briefly read her bio, and I know that Renee is with us, and we'll give her a moment to address the community. But Renee Hill is returning from retirement to extend a 27-year career in the district that began immediately after the time that she spent at UCR as a student. Renee served as a classroom teacher and a site administrator. Thereafter, she did make a transition to the private sector for a period of time, working through all of North America, the US and Canada as a project manager, I believe at that time, building cell towers. And during that time, she also completed a master's degree in business from Stanford University. Renee returned to the district as a math teacher, or excuse me, as a math specialist, and as progressed through the roles of director and retiring from RUSD as an assistant superintendent. In her short retirement, it's not even been 3 years, Renee has been consulting with a nonprofit that supports instructional technology integration and closing the digital divide. She volunteers with her neighborhood group, as well as the UC Riverside Alumni Association, and currently serves as the chair of the Girl Scouts Network for the San Gorgonio Council. Renee takes pride in all that she has ever been asked to do and continues to do. She is certainly looking forward to coming back and serving the students in the community of Riverside Unified once again. And Renee and her family, just as a side note, they enjoy gardening, caring for their historic home here in the Wood Streets, traveling, and taking care of a lot of different family responsibilities with their 2 grandchildren. Renee, if you are here, would you like to just come on and share your thoughts and feelings of coming back and serving as the Chief Academic Officer in RUSD?
We can't
Okay.
hear you,
Okay.
Renee. Okay. There you go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hanson and board. I'm happy to be extending my 27 years with the district. Glad to be back. And especially at this crazy time when we're doing remote learning. It's something I learned about, and it'll be a new application for it. I'm excited to be back with the team and help move the organization forward.
Thank you, Renee. And again, we welcome you back. And as I mentioned, this appointment, although being appointed this evening, that the board took action on, it will be official on July the 1st. So welcome home, Renee. We've missed you.
Thank you.
And to Lynn Carmen Day, a beloved friend and great leader. Yes, standing ovation virtually for Lynn. And while we still get you for a couple more months, congratulations and best to you, Lynn, as the new superintendent in the Claremont or the Upland Unified School District. Back to you, Mrs. Alavi.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to Renee. And now I would like to switch to our Pledge of Allegiance. We are going to have our Pledge of Allegiance by Phoebe Del Pizzo from Lake Matthews. And after she delivers the Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Hodnett will read her bio.
Hi, my name is Phoebe Del Pizzo and I attend Lake Matthews Elementary School. My principals are Mrs. Raspidic and Mrs. Oler. I'm in Miss Howard's and Miss Schulte's class this year. And today I have my family with me. This is my dad, Darren Del Pizzo.
Hello.
This is my mom, Lisa Del Pizzo. And this is my sister, Lola Del Pizzo. Please stand. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was great. And now, Mr. Hodnett, would you like to read the biography?
Yes, I would love to. Lake Matthews Elementary School is proud to have Phoebe Del Pizzo representing their school and community by leading the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. Phoebe is a model student who is trustworthy, respectful, accountable, cooperative, kind, and safe. Phoebe is a 5th grade student in Miss Howard's class who excels academically, and these qualities have helped her earn high honors. She puts forth her best effort and always keeps a growth mindset. In 4th grade, Phoebe passed all of the math standards up to the 8th grade on the math program Dreambox. Phoebe is also a student leader. She is energetic about all the leadership activities, and she has proven to be a true leader. She and another student leader took on the task of writing the entire script for the school's winter program and will be used for years to come. Lake Matthews is honored to have Phoebe as a student and a student leader.
Thank you, Mr. Hodnett. And now we're going to have a group performance. We will be provided with a video by vocal soloist John David Romo from Pauley High School.
Hi, my name is John David Romo, and I am a 9th grade student at Riverside Pauley High School and the bass in the chamber singers under the direction of Miss Walton. Before school closures, I was invited to the ACDA Western Regional Honor Choir that took place in Utah. During this conference, I was able to learn many new singing techniques. This was a huge honor because I was the only one selected in the city of Riverside. Thank you, RUSD and Riverside Pauley High School, for your support. During school closures, I am still able to practice my singing, music theory, and take weekly virtual lessons. I hope everyone is staying safe at home. Today, I am going to be singing Hallelujah by Tori Kelly. I've heard there was a secret chord that David played and pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do ya? Well, it goes like this: the 4th, the 5th, the minor fall, and the major lift, the baffled king composing hallelujah, hallelujah, Hallelujah. 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 You say I took the name in vain. I don't even know the name, but if I did, well really, what's it to ya? There's a blaze of light in every word. It doesn't matter what you heard, the holy or the broken. Hallelujah. 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 I did my best, it wasn't much. I couldn't feel, so I tried to touch. I told the truth, I didn't come to fool ya. And even though it all went wrong, I'll stand before the Lord of song with nothing on my tongue but hallelujah. 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 Thank you.
That was just wonderful. We really thank him very much for that. And now we were going to go on to a presentation. I will call upon Mr. Tim Walker and Miss Kathy Holmes to deliver this presentation.
Thank you, Mrs. Alavi. Mrs. Alavi, Dr. Hanson, members of the board. I'm joined this evening by Kathy Holmes, a partner for BB&K here in Riverside. We're going to give you a presentation. Tonight, you'll hear the presentation on legal implications that have had an impact on, you have implications, have an impact on meetings of the Board of Education in public, specifically pertaining to the Brown Act, also known as open meeting laws, and the compliance associated with that act. In broad strokes, Executive Order N2520, passed on March the 20th of 2020, along with Executive Order 2920, passed on St. Patrick's Day, and Executive Order 3520, passed on March 21st, have impacts on meeting location, the facilities, board members, participation in the meetings, and also public participation and input. And since the onset of COVID-19, there have been executive orders that were passed by the governor as specified. So 2520 authorizes the state or local legislative bodies during a period of in which measures that promote social distancing are imposed or recommended to hold public meetings via teleconferencing and to make meetings accessible electronically to all members of the public seeking to attend or address the body. It also waived requirements expressly or implicitly requiring the physical presence of members, the clerk, or the personnel of the body, or of the public as a condition of participation in or a quorum for a public meeting. Now, specifically, Order 2520 suspended specific requirements. They included state and local bodies' notice of each teleconference location from which a member would be participating in public meeting. Previously, you had to post that where a board member was, and you also had to make that location accessible to the public. This waived that. Each teleconference location being accessible to the public, members of the public could address the body at each teleconference location. And the state and local bodies post agendas at all teleconference locations. All of these were waived. At least one member of the state body be physically present at the location specified in the notice of the meeting. and during teleconferencing meetings, at least a quorum of the members of the local body participate from locations within the boundaries or the territory over which the local body exercises jurisdiction. So in effect, board members would have to have at least 3 members in Riverside holding a board meeting, and up to 2 board members could have been somewhere else, open to the public and publicly noticed, so members of the public could go to that location and participate. Order 2520 voided all of those requirements in a time when we were starting to participate by electronic means in a virtual meeting. 2 other executive orders were passed as specified, one on March 17th, one on March 21st. And I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Holmes now to get into the specificities of N2920 and N3520. Kathy?
Okay, I think I had a mute issue. Can everyone hear me now?
I can hear you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. This is my first actual Zoom board meeting, so forgive me. Thank you, Tim, for that summary of that first order. And these executive orders have been issued, as Tim said, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The first issue was ordered, like Tim said, when we were just starting out and there was guidance given statewide about recommendations about social distancing. At that time, there were different parameters across the state, and yet people were still allowed to congregate together, albeit under certain guidelines. As the crisis continued to quickly evolve, as we know, things were put into place very quickly in terms of additional, more restrictive guidance for people congregating in public. So 5 days later, after the first executive order on March 17th, 2020, Governor Newsom did issue Executive Order 2920. That order acknowledges, as did the first one, that strict compliance with various statutes would prevent, hinder, or delay appropriate action to mitigate effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, and therefore further action was needed to be clear. Actually, go back to the prior slide, and I think, yes, this is perfect. And then I'll tell you when to, thank you for whoever is facilitating that, but when we go to the next slide, I'll give you a little hint. What this order did was readdress the language in the first order given the new rules. Section 3 of this order is the order that applies to the Brown Act compliance. It technically withdraws all of Section 11, which is which was the prior order.
Yeah.
It does carry over a lot of the language from that order. The main changes are reflective of the fact that there will no longer be one required place where members of the public are afforded an opportunity to come in person to participate. It provides some other guidance or requirements, actually, that are required to be in place in order for these issues to still be waived or suspended. But assuming and presuming that the district stays in compliance with those rules, the requirement that expressly or impliedly requires the physical presence of members, the clerk or other personnel of the body or the public as a condition of participation in a forum in a public meeting, that is language from the previous order that remains in this existing order, and that remains waived. It also continues to suspend all of the provisions that exist in the Brown Act. One of the elements that Tim read comes from the Bagley-Keene Act with respect to state agencies. But the language that is otherwise required by the Brown Act in those 1 through 6 on slide 4, those still remain suspended at this time, and that exact language from the original order is maintained. Yes, thank you. That language is currently still in existence in Executive Order 2920. So if we could go to slide 6, actually, at the bottom, I see the numbers. That's perfect. Okay, so the executive order specifically states a local legislative body that holds a meeting via teleconferencing and allows members of the board to observe, notice the language is no longer access, or attend is the actual word, But if we allow members of the public to observe and address the meeting telephonically or otherwise electronically, consistent with the notice requirements and accessibility requirements set forth in that order, you shall be deemed to have satisfied any requirement that the body allow members of the public to attend the meeting and offer public comment. So you will see that there are, that the new language in this order provides for certain requirements, certain accessibility requirements. And you'll see on the slides, on slide 6, number 2, we need to implement a procedure for receiving and swiftly resolving requests for reasonable modification or accommodations from individuals with disabilities, consistent with the ADA, and resolving any doubt in favor of accessibility. We could go to slide 7, please. It also requires you to still provide advance notice of the public meeting, and you post your agendas according to the regular timeframes that are already prescribed by the Brown Act. So 72 hours for regular meetings and 24 hours for special meetings. And then in that agenda, you need to give your explanation or notice of the means by which members of the public may observe the meeting and offer public comment in each instance where the notice or agenda is posted. If we could go to slide 8. And if there is any change by the means in which you make available that ability to observe and comment, you need to use the most rapid means of communication available, which includes posting the change to the legislative body's website in order to provide this information. This order is specific that it only remains in effect during the period of time where state and local public health officials have imposed or recommended social distancing measures. So when those orders are lifted and business is back to usual, this language that gives you some relief from the other provisions of the Brown Act will go away and no longer be suspended. We'll be back to needing to comply with the requirements as specifically stated, as we all know before. 4 days later, the governor issued another executive order. This is N3520 on March 21st, 2020. There is nothing in this order or section which impacts or amends the language that we just discussed from the prior executive order. So that the one we just discussed is the main language that governs your offering of public facilities and facilitation of public input. What this order does do, however, is it suspends the Brown Act to the extent that the Government Code section 54952.2 would prevent a federal, state, or local government official from providing updates on the emergency response collectively to the entire board. It does give you some flexibility and allow board members to ask questions of the official providing the briefing, but it is very specific that board members cannot discuss or deliberate on any of these matters or take any action as a result of the emergency information that we are provided or you are provided. We could go to the next slide, please. What it does, obviously, is it enables a single efficient update in the time of emergency to be provided to elected officials. But again, it must only be a briefing. Board members really do need to be cautious to, if you ask a question, it is only a clarifying question, and you are not to discuss any issues that may be considered deliberations or action, and certainly not make any policy. If there are questions that board members have that should be discussed or acted upon, this executive order provides the authority and the guidance that those issues should be agendized for a typical open meeting, and such a meeting should be called and facilitated in your typical format. So that's the updates with respect to the current executive orders as we know them currently.
There's a second portion of this presentation that's going to have involvement of clarification for public input, the facilitation of effective public input consistent with Executive Order N2920, and the pieces that connect to the Brown Act as well as the orders and the board policies that are in place relative to the holding of board meetings. I'm going to defer to Kathy for the legal analysis of this and explanation of public input, both consistent with these orders and with future board meetings of the Board of Education.
Sure, thank you, Tim. So as Tim mentioned, if we could go back to slide 11, and I think we'll stick on here for the remainder of the presentation. But our discussions about facilitation of public input under the new parameters of the executive orders led to some considerations and some further questions generally about public input in general. And so we thought it would be relevant to discuss that as a component of this presentation as well. So to start off, there's an agenda that is prepared for each board meeting, and that agenda serves a few purposes. One main purpose, obviously, is to satisfy the legal requirements that are set out in the Brown Act. The Brown Act, as you know, is specifically Government Code Section 54954.2A1, requires that legislative bodies of local public agencies post an agenda that contains a brief description of each item of business to be transacted or discussed at the meeting, including items to be discussed in closed session. The Brown Act in this section that I'm referring to is specifically 54954.2A3, as well as the Education Code in section 35145.5, make it clear that no action or discussion shall be undertaken on any item that is not posted on the agenda. Notwithstanding that, it's important to note that the Brown Act, and I'm referring at this instance to section 54954.2A3, under that section, on their own initiative, members of a legislative body may ask a question or clarification or make a brief announcement or a brief report on his or her own activities. And I'll explain why that's important in just a minute. But going back to the agenda, there's a practical function of the agenda as well. And that function is that it lays out, a typical program, if you will, of what the flow of a public meeting will look like. As we saw earlier today, you have an typical opening ceremony, you have a call to meeting, we have a pledge of allegiance, and often some input by a presentation. And tonight's was lovely, I enjoyed it. In this organizational structure, the agenda provides a nice visual picture, a roadmap for everyone following along with the meeting as to what can be expected and to come next in the flow of the meeting. Specifically with respect to facilitation of public input or public comment, the question was raised to me as whether the board must facilitate public comment during every identified number or letter that is included on this roadmap, or collectively what constitutes your evening's agenda. And the answer to that question is no. Under the Brown Act, every agenda must provide an opportunity for members of the public to directly address the legislative body on any item of interest to the public before or during the legislative body's consideration of that item that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the legislative body. So you have a regular section on your agenda for public input, which provides members of the public this opportunity. Under your existing bylaws, it is the responsibility of the board president to ensure that meetings are conducted in an efficient, transparent, and orderly manner. And that's for board bylaw, I believe, 9121. And this includes ensuring that members of the public are afforded an appropriate opportunity, to speak during that part of the meeting that is reserved for public input. And the board president is also charged with facilitating the specific public input on each item of business that is to be transacted or discussed at the meeting. So going back to specific questions were asked of me about those times during your meeting where the superintendent provides his report, or where board members are invited to provide a few personal comments and share those personal comments. And separate public input does not need to be facilitating during these portions of the meeting. These sections essentially provide a time for the superintendent and board members to individually provide their own personal announcements and personal activity reports. This is contemplated by the Brown Act as outside of the parameters of the required agenda items of business to be discussed or transacted at the meeting. Again, I referred to that before, but that's section 54954.2A1. This type of information actually can be presented without any indication or inclusion on your agenda, as it comes outside what was required to be on your agenda. You'll note on your current agenda, there's no general description of the superintendent's report or the board member comments, and that's because they're not considered to be items of business to be transacted or discussed at the meeting. Again, the board is limited to discussion or action on items that have been placed and adequately agendized or adequately described on the agenda. Going back again, these items or these components of your meeting do not have a general description requirement. In fact, there cannot be any collective discussion or action undertaken by the board as a whole on these individual reports. Members of the public would not be prohibited from commenting on what they heard in either the superintendent's report or the board member comments during the specific time reserved for public input, so long as the opportunity for public input is on your agenda to be facilitated after both of these two components of your meeting take place. Your board policy also provides discretion in terms of how input is facilitated. With board consent, your board president may increase or decrease the total amount of time allowed for public input, depending on the topic and the number of speakers that are trying to be heard on that. So that does give you some flexibility in terms of how you present or obtain public input during your agenda time. For those items of business to be transacted or discussed by the board, in other words, the specific matters contemplated by the Brown Act as agenda items, the board president must facilitate a time for public input before or during the board's consideration of that item. So, Tim, do you have anything else to add for that?
No, Kathy. No. If you're done, we can take questions from the board.
Yes, yes. Are there any questions for me based on this information?
Can you hear me, Kathy?
Board members,
I can.
Do you have any questions?
Okay, may I have a question, Mrs. Alabi, if that's all right?
Yes, Mr. Hunt.
Thank you. I'm sorry, the sound is very low here. Ms. Holmes, you said that as to speaking to the superintendent, as the public member wanting to speak to the superintendent and or the board members' comments, they can do that if they can do that during the public session portion, as long as the public session portion comes after those other two?
Yes, in that way they would have heard what was said and they could make any comment that they had about that information during that time.
So when someone comes up to the podium, or they're giving Beth a card and they want to speak on the superintendent, whatever, or the board's comments before, or they want us to speak first so she can, we know what we're talking about. We say, Mrs. Alabi says, no, I'm sorry, that is clearly under public comments. That is we're at item 7, that's at item 9, whatever, right?
It's possible to say, we aren't taking public comment on this component of the agenda. However, if you would like to comment on something you hear from the superintendent, if that's the section that the person is wishing to speak for, it can be clarified for that member of the public when their comment about what they hear will be facilitated.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Lee.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, thank you, President Alabi. You touched on this a little bit in the presentation, but if you could just maybe give a little bit more details in regards to the public participation in the meeting. If they don't have access to, the internet or Google Docs to submit their query, how would they go about making sure they could participate in the meeting?
Your current agenda includes specific language about how they can participate, and I understand gives contact information for folks if they aren't able to access the information that has been in the way that it has been posted.
Are there any other questions from any other board members? Okay, thank you very much, Kathy and Tim. Thank you very much. We're now going to be moving ahead to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam President Alvey, and good evening, members of the board and members of the public who are watching us. This certainly is a unique and challenging time with the worldwide pandemic of the COVID-19, and it's certainly disrupting all of our normal routines. And I'm very mindful and especially concerned of all of those individuals who are suffering from the COVID-19 virus, or those families who have certainly lost loved ones. I'm also very much aware of those affected by the shutdown of parts of our economy, and very concerned and worried about the lasting effects of that shutdown. And so I just want you to know that my prayers and the prayers of and thoughts of my family, they're heartfelt, and they're with all of you, especially those who are most vulnerable. I'm very grateful for a lot of, and I have a lot of respect to the scientists and to the medical field who are working around the clock to help find a vaccine or a cure and provide that cure for those that are suffering with this illness. I'm also especially grateful to members of this Board of Education for providing your steady, your calm, and your supportive leadership to not just staff, but the members of the community. And I'm also grateful, certainly last but not least, to all the RUSD staff members who are working so hard to provide meals, community updates, distance learning resources, devices, internet connection, and the list goes on and on. And matter of fact, this evening, board members, you are going to hear a detailed update of all the work that staff has been doing for the last 4 weeks as it results to coronavirus or COVID-19. And I also want the community to know that this Thursday evening, we will have again a community meeting for all students and parents and staff members, community members, and we've changed the time. It'll be 6:30 in the evening. That'll be on April the 9th, this Thursday. It'll be our third or fourth update to the entire community, and I want you to be able to tune in and learn more about that event. And that concludes my comments for this evening, Madam President.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to go on to board members' comments, and I'll call on you individually. We're going to start with Mr. Hunt.
Give me for just a minute, Mrs. Alloway, till I get this worked out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Lee?
Sure, I'll keep mine brief. I just want to extend my gratitude to the entire team, administrators especially, and cabinet for their tireless efforts to keep RUSD the amazing and extraordinary district that it is. As a parent of 3 kids who is experiencing firsthand how do you homeschool kids using the resources that are given to us by the district, I don't know that a district as big as ours, with as big as staff as we have, you could do it any better. And that's just not me talking, but I've heard from parents and teachers and staff members alike who are extremely grateful for the efforts that this team has put together in such a short amount of time. So I just want to thank each and every one of you and all the teachers and all the team that's been helping behind the scenes. It was a pretty joyous sight to see a line of cars at Arlington this morning picking up their devices to make sure their kids could participate in distance learning. So congratulations to everybody, and thank you to the parents and the students and the teachers out there for your patience and for your grace as we all kind of navigate this new environment together.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Dr. Farouk.
Thank you, President Alavi. I just want to echo the sentiments that Trustee Lee and Dr. Hanson shared, just how grateful, again, we are to everybody. And you know, what's unique about this circumstance is that there's a role and contribution for everyone to play even if it's just maintaining the social physical distancing. But especially to the first responders and to our employees that are providing meals and access to technology and all of the other responsiveness that we've been doing to the community, just heartfelt appreciations and just wishing everyone safety.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Lockdawson?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. I want to thank our staff for doing an incredible amount of work, particularly our curriculum and instruction. You essentially reinvented the world this week, so I've been very impressed with that. And our nutrition services staff who are out there serving meals, and our IT guys who are out there getting all the Chromebooks ready. So it's been crazy the amount of work you've all been doing. So I want to give you just let you know how much I appreciate it as a mom and a board member and a community member as well. And also my heart goes out to our families out there. I think this is a really, really tough time. We're all going through it. It's scary. You know, how do you talk to your children about this? How do you keep it out of the house so it's not continually just wearing on you? So we do have links to mental health support on our website too. So I want to encourage everybody to go there and have a look at those, because I think we could all use a little help these days. But thank you, everybody. Thanks, and hang in there. We'll get through it. Stay strong. Thanks, Mrs. Alvey.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hodnett, our student board member, do you have anything to say tonight?
Yes, I do. I would just like to kind of just piggyback off of what you said. I would really want to ask like our entire RUSD family to like stretch out a hand, especially to our seniors this year, because like, you know, being a senior, I know it's an extremely rough time right now. And, you know, just a simple check-in could really just make all the difference, you know, because like, it, you know, it came out of nowhere, and like it seems like the only going to school was the only bit of stability some students had, you know, and just for that to be taken away could put us who knows where. So, you know, I just ask, you know, the people of Riverside, you know, to please just check in on the class of 2020, because yeah, it impacted us in a different way. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Good words. Mr. Hunt, do you have comments? Mr. Hunt?
Okay, hang on. Let me try again. Oh, yeah. I'm muted by the host. How's that? Okay, there we go. Can you hear me, Mrs. Alvey?
Yes, I sure can.
Thank you, ma'am. Board Member Hodnett, that was well put. And I think that's, you all are on our minds. We know that your class was born in the time of 9/11, and here at what is a happy memory, I'm sure, for all of us on this broadcast. It certainly was for me. And it's just that ritual and right to go through graduation. And we're all heartbroken for you. That can't happen, but we do think about you, and we should think of ways. I know this board has talked about it, Freddie, to think of ways how to work with the seniors more and to recognize y'all. I too want to just echo my colleagues that I'm very proud of our executive staff, all the staff. And I thank Dr. Hanson for his leadership in putting together just a quality championship team that has proven themselves and continues to focus on the 40,000 young people we're charged with educating and helping their parents, and our 4,000 employees who I think have been admirable. I know too that they're saying that the next, the Surgeon General, I think, said the next 2 weeks or so are going to be the toughest, the hardest for America. And I have no reason to doubt the gentleman. But from what I can see about the school district that I am so humbly proud to serve with all of you, and that includes every one of our employees, we're all in this together, that what I see happening is that if it continues this way, Mrs. Alvey, when folks look back on this one day, I think they'll decide that this was RUSD's finest hour, that we displayed under Dr. Hanson's leadership, under your leadership of the board, Mrs. Alvey, we displayed the spirit of 1965. We really kept with what John North and Art Littleworth and Lou Vanderzil on to do the right thing and to keep the main thing, and that is quality education and service for our children. So I'm very proud to be a part of that. I know we'll get through it, and I look forward to safely getting through it with all of you, particularly us elderly ones there, Kath. So God bless you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mrs. Allaby.
Thank you. And I'll just follow that up by echoing Mr. Hunt's statements that this is really a defining moment for this generation. And Mr. Hodnett, you and your fellow students of 2020 are going to look back on this and see how it has defined your lives. So I ask you to hang with us as we try to work all the little details out, the technical details, to offer our digital learning in the coming week. And I know it's going to be very important. I also want to reach out my thanks to our community partners who've really helped and stepped up. One of those being the Riverside Art Museum, which has made available all the art lessons online through Art2Go. I'm very grateful to the Art Museum for being a partner at this time, and thank all the teachers who've really gone above and beyond to create class work that is going to be stimulating and interesting and keep their students engaged. So thank you, everybody. And now we are going to go on to public input, and we're going to ask Ms. Kirsten Reno-Frosto to please read public input.
Thank you, Board President Allaby. Our first one is Kelly Copenhaver. The topic is graduation. I understand the district is trying to come up with a creative solution for graduations this year. As a mother of a high school senior, I appreciate the district's efforts to celebrate and acknowledge the class of 2020 during these unprecedented times. I understand that a traditional ceremony is not possible at this time, but after speaking with many other senior parents, it seems we all would still like to see our children walk across the stage and receive a diploma in front of their peers, family, and friends, even if this means postponing until we are able to gather in large groups once again. If this means waiting until December, until students can come home from college during winter break, or even waiting until spring break in 2021. With so many activities taken from the class of 2020 this year, for example, prom, grad night, yearbook signings, spring sports, please help these students at least be able to have a proper graduation ceremony. Thank you for your time and for all of your dedication to helping the students of Riverside. Our second comment from Jennifer Murtaugh, also on senior graduation. Please consider moving graduation out so that our seniors can still have a graduation ceremony. Our third comment, Nicole Thrower, also graduation. In light of current pandemic, I am sure that something will be carefully considered, especially for the graduating seniors and the promotion of 8th graders and 6th graders in the district. The seniors and parents of seniors absolutely desire to have an official graduation when social distancing is no longer a factor. The last comment, Donna Garcia. Please consider giving the seniors their graduation that they so well deserve. I understand that it may be months away, but I feel that this is the rite of passage and something that is needed for these kids to move on. This has been such a stressful time in our lives, but our seniors are feeling it even more. What is supposed to be the best times of their school year is being taken away from them. Please give consideration to giving our seniors their graduation that they deserve. And that concludes the public comments.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to have our district group reports. We're going to start with our Riverside Council Parent Teacher Association report, which is usually given by Mary Beth Loyal, but tonight will be given by Ms. Reno-Frosto, and she will also be given the following report as well.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Hanson, Board President Allaby, and members of the board. Thank you all for your work in moving over 40,000 students out of the classroom to instruction from home during the shelter-in-place order due to the coronavirus. Information is critical during this time. The Riverside Unified School District has done an exceptional job providing resources for students and parents on your website, sending out updates, and welcoming community questions during the weekly superintendent's live stream. We applaud the efforts of district administrators, principals, teachers, and staff to acquire tech knowledge and build an existing virtual classroom skills to serve us during this unprecedented time. Trying to describe our current state is difficult as we have no points of reference for what we are experiencing. It feels surreal, uncertain, an everlasting present of sorts. While planning for the future seems complicated at this time, it is work we encourage our unit PTA leaders to continue. The Riverside Council PTA has received guidance that California State PTA has investigated all legal ramifications, and given these unprecedented circumstances and Governor Newsom's dictate, teleconferencing for district, council, and unit general association meetings will be allowed through June 30th, 2020. This provision includes the election meeting of the association that is typically held each spring. The requirements for elected officers do not change. All current terms will end on June 30th, 2020. Meetings via teleconference are optional. However, opting to forego the election meeting would have a profound impact on our students when classes resume next school year, should a PTA board not be in place. Riverside Council PTA is working with Dr. Lewis to get information to principals as we encourage them to participate in election meetings should units choose to conduct them. Riverside Council PTA is here to support our units through this process. We will be calling each unit president in the coming weeks to offer guidance for the remainder of their term. We are here to serve the RUSD community and encourage the district, teachers, and families to reach out to us with needs and concerns. You can email us at rivcouncilpta@gmail.com, which is rivcouncilpta@gmail.com. The digital divide has been an advocacy focus for the PTA over the past decade. It is now most critical that all students have access to the internet from home. We invite everyone to participate in an upcoming webinar with California State PTA President Celia Jaffe, former State Superintendent Tom Torlakson, and the California Emerging Technology Fund to learn how to support children and families impacted by the digital divide, including what resources are available to families statewide and how to qualify for free and low-cost services during these challenging times. The meeting will be Thursday, April 9th from 7 to 8 o'clock, and we will post the link. The Carol Rood Senior Scholarship deadline has been extended to June 1st, 2020 to provide all students time to complete the application and acquire a letter of recommendation from a teacher. We have also included an option to email applications to scholarships.rivcouncilpta@gmail.com. In addition to emailing them in, this information is on the updated forms that have been sent to all high school principals and counselors. We encourage all students who actively volunteer in their community and have a GPA of 2.5 or higher to apply. Scholarship recipients will be notified by June 10th, 2020. Thank you again for your leadership through uncharted territory. We are all in this together. Serving the RUSD community is Riverside Council PTA's priority, and please let us know how we can help.
Thank you. And now a report from Ms. Mariela Fernandez, President of the District English Learner Advisory Committee, which we call DLAC.
Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Hanson, and the rest of the Riverside Unified School District staff. I want to thank you for the opportunity to continue being able to communicate with you online. This is so valuable during these times in which the community at large deserves attention, support, and response to the many concerns that we are experiencing each day. I value the effort that Dr. Hanson makes, sure to keep us as community leaders of the district informed and also being in constant communication with you. This is priceless and supports the community input. I want to thank President of the Board, Mrs. Kathy Alavey, for joining us at our last DLAC meeting, which took place in March. The contact with the community allows us to have an ample and current vision of our needs. I also want to thank Mr. Brent Lee for joining us and listening to us. These are difficult times, time to be taking care of our nuclear families, and as a district, I know that you are doing everything possible so that distance learning can be accessible for all students. We value the efforts that you are making to provide simultaneous Spanish interpretation every week for our Spanish-speaking community, since it is we, the parents and guardians, that need to channel, understand, and use all the information provided to guide us through all these changes to do what is best and most appropriate for our children. I cannot forget to request that we please continue doing everything possible to address special education, since our challenges are very difficult. But with you joining us and your professionalism, we can work better. Special education has many challenges at this time, but I am certain that you are working so that each of our families has the necessary guidance. I admire your efforts and I offer my hand as a friend for anything that you need. We will continue joining you in all that is necessary so that our RUSD students and families are well. We want to see each other again. Sincerely, Mariela Fernandez.
Thank you very much. Lovely reports. And now we will address our consent agenda. I will look for a motion.
Motion to approve.
There's been a motion. Do I have a second?
Can I just interject, Mrs. Alavi? Is Freddie able to pull a couple items so that he can vote on the rest of the consent calendar?
Thank you.
Yes. I would like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exceptions of 25 and 26.
Seconded.
Dr. Farouk, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'll just make my motion for the other ones.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we will now address the consent agenda minus items 25 and 26, and I will do a roll call just to make sure everybody is accounted for. Mr. Hunt?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Dr. Farouk?
Yes.
Ms. Lock-Dawson?
Yes.
Mr. Hudnett?
Yes.
Thank you very much. And now, Dr. Farouk.
And President Alvey, did you record your vote as well?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes, my vote is yes.
Okay.
Now go ahead and address those other items.
I'll move to the other items.
I think I heard that you made a motion for items 25 and 26. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I heard Ms. Lock-Dawson, and so we will now vote on that. Mr. Hunt?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Dr. Farouk?
Yes.
Ms. Lock-Dawson?
Yes.
No, Mr. Hodnett cannot vote on those, so I'm gonna leave him aside, and I vote yes. So those two items did pass. Thank you very much. And now moving on to our action agenda. We have a Board of Education approving resolution 2019-2047 recognizing Classified Employees Week. Is this a Ms. Ibarra item?
Yes, it is. Thank you. President Alavi, Dr. Hansen, and members of the board. Tonight, we are bringing to you two traditional resolutions. The first one is a recommendation for the Board of Education to approve resolution number 2019-2047, recognizing Classified Employees Week as May 17th through May 23rd, 2020. But prior to doing that and asking for your approval, we would like to show you a brief slideshow. So if I could actually, there's a couple slides that go with this one. If they could please go to slide 1 for the 2019-2020 Site Classified Employees of the Year. Okay. All right, well, I will just present it for you. So with that, what we wanted to do this year, and it's in your packet, is be able to give to you the Site Classified Employees of the Year. And we have a slide that actually has all of the Site Classified Employees of the Year. Being that we will not be in session this year, we wanted to be able to publicly show you who they were as we will be celebrating them. They have already gone out to all of their sites, but we wanted to also publicly show you tonight. And then we wanted to share with you that the Classified School Employee of the Year is Teresa Clark Skaggs. And we are here to honor her. Teresa began her career with Riverside Unified School District in 2006, starting as an instructional assistant, a substitute teacher, and various other substitute positions. Teresa has worked as an instructional assistant at the middle school and is now through Earhart Middle School. So we wanted to bring that to you prior to asking for your approval on the classified week.
I have a question. Oh,
Yes, Dr. Farouk?
I know that we're trying to be creative with how we want to honor them. Or would we consider also extending to honor them simultaneously with next year's honorees physically as well, in addition to what we're going to do now?
Absolutely, Dr. Farouk. We are trying to be very creative in some of our ways, because the next resolution I'm going to bring to you is the one with regards to the teacher of the actual day of the teacher. And so what we would like to be able to do for all of our employees of the year this year is we will be sending out notice a letter, an actual formal letter, but we'll also be doing some other things that we'll be bringing to you later on as to what those plans are. But yes, we do plan to invite all of these employees of the year back next year too.
That's great. Thank you, Kylie.
So I do ask that we take action on that classified employee of the week.
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I second.
All right, Mr. Hodnett. We will now do a roll call. Mr. Hunt,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Farouk,
Yes.
Ms. Lock-Dawson,
Yes.
Mr. Hodnett,
Yes.
and I say yes. So that does pass. Do you want to go forward on the day of the teacher?
Absolutely. If you don't mind, I'll just move forward for you. So the next part that we bring to you is that we ask that the Board of Education approve resolution number 2019-2020-46, recognizing California Day of the Teacher as May 13th, 2020. But again, prior we had some slides, and I will just let you know what we've done here is we've also contributed the Site Teacher of the Year for all of our district. You have also received that, but I will publicly tell you who our Site Teachers of the Year are for elementary, middle, and high school. So for elementary, we have Teresa Anderson from Woodcrest Elementary. For middle school, we have Keisha Brown from University Heights Middle School. And for high school, we have Ms. Alexia Wilson at Riverside Poly High School. So those are our three teachers of the year who, again, to go back to what Dr. Farouk had shared, we will absolutely be honoring them and celebrating them and letting them have their time next year too. So I do ask that you do take action on May 13th as California Day of the Teacher.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval.
Ms. Lock-Dawson, do I have the second?
Second.
Mr. Hunt seconds.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Just a quick question, Mrs. Ibarra. When will you be announcing these to these worthy individuals?
They've actually been announced. Each of the sites did a fund under the circumstances, as you can imagine. It was a little bit different timing wise, right when they got out, but Poly did an announcement on last Friday, as did Woodcrest Elementary. And then I believe Wednesday at a staff meeting virtually, University Heights was notified. So they've all been notified and they're all getting prepared to move forward to the county.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now do a roll call vote. Mr. Hunt,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Farouk,
Yes.
Ms. Lock-Dawson,
Yes.
Mr. Hodnett,
Yes.
and I say yes, so that is unanimous. Oh, and now we're seeing the slides. Congratulations to all our teachers of the year. That's really wonderful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. We're now ready to have a report on the topics related to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic and how they're being handled in our district. Dr. Hanson, are you taking that?
So thank you, Mrs. Alavi and members of the board. Yeah, as I mentioned in my superintendent's comments, very, very grateful for the work that the team has done with this presentation or everything leading up to this presentation. So if I could ask the slide deck to please come online, then there's going to be various staff members that walk us through this. Next slide, please. This presentation is going to be divided into 4 areas. We're going to talk briefly, just an overall, Tim Walker is going to give an overall update on just some of RUSD's actions around the COVID-19. Then we'll have a report on meals that Ms. Kakish will talk about briefly. And then Dr. Lewis and his team is going to go into distance learning. And then Ms. Kakish is also going to refer to the budget, as she's been in a lot of different meetings last week with county and state folks regarding what this means to California's budget and K through 12 budget. Next slide, please. Mr. Walker, would you like to jump in here and you can take the next few slides?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Hanson. I'm trying to find this on my presentation here. So we start off with what is COVID-19, and the coronavirus is well known by everyone at this point in time. We've been dealing with it for quite a period of time within the Riverside Unified School District, and lots of action since then. Basically, it's a respiratory illness that can spread from one person to another, and patients with COVID-19 have mild to severe respiratory illnesses with symptoms of fever, cough, shortness of breath appearing for anywhere from 2 to 14 days after exposure. Next slide, please. The prevention associated with this virus is obviously not in the area of medicine. It is with preventing exposure. The Public Health Department came up with saying a little mantra of stay in place, maintain your space, and cover your face. Many of you are aware of the many public health orders that have been put out, including the recent one that requires, if you're leaving your home, to wear a face covering. That was practiced today at the device distribution up at Arlington High School by all members of the Riverside Unified School District team. I want to congratulate everybody on those actions and for helping to facilitate not only the covering of face, but also the maintenance of 6 feet for those who are doing the walk-up line and could not get there on cars. Our government orders that came through, next slide. Since the pandemic came out, Governor Newsom declared a state of emergency. As you know, around that same time that Dr. Kaiser declared a health emergency. Dr. Kaiser ordered cancellation of events over 250 people, so we were limited to 250. Then Dr. Kaiser ordered schools closed right after RUSD schools were closed through April the 3rd, and Board of Education took action to close our schools. He extended the closure of schools through the 30th of April. Then he issued his stay home order with assignment of essential personnel, school district personnel who had responsibilities for essential work, including nutrition and for education through distant learning. Our infrastructure were able to come to work. And then recently on April 1st, Dr. Kaiser extended the closure of schools through June 19th. I don't know if Mays is going to take this slide or if she would like me to do so.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Walker. Mays Kakish, Chief Business Officer and Government Relations for Riverside Unified School District. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and our audience. I'd like to just give a little bit of an update about nutrition services for this time. We have evolved as we are basically going into new uncharted waters. So for the first week of the closure, we tried to service our students from all sites to the best of our ability. So we did open services at all of our sites. And as the pandemic continued to, and the orders continued to come from the county and the state level to keep as many home as possible. In the week of spring break, we narrowed down. Usually on spring break, we don't actually have any service of meals, but we did provide meals for over 10 of our sites. And we've added at that time also parks that are convenient for our families to get to receive the meals. And those were Bobby Bonds and Villegas community centers. And as we continued with our services and we came back from spring break, we actually increased our sites again to 15 sites for elementary schools and all of our middle schools. We added 2 more parks, and that is Don Jones and Hunt Park, along with Bobby Bonds and Villegas. We also received requests to service many of our partners for Meals on Wheels for seniors. 2 shelters reached out to us that also have students, Salvation Army and Path of Life. We continue to provide for private childcare that requested our service. And just recently, we finished collaborating with the city to provide meals for childcare for our frontline workers and health workers. And so we continue, and we're committed to continue to have our meals being served to our students to the best of our ability. All of our staff are meeting all of the guidelines and orders that are set for us by the county health department and the state level. The next slide just gives you an idea of the number of meals that we have served. If you can go to the next slides, Jeff, please. And that gives you by week how many sites we serviced and the number of meals that were serviced. As you see, this is as of April 3rd because we had to be ready for the board meeting, but we serviced over another 30 meals since then, 30,000 meals since then. So we're over 160 meals, 170 meals by now. And that is for the update on meals. And I'll come back to you with information about the budget after a few more slides.
Next slide, please. In the area of security, the first week that we were closed, we had the Riverside Police Department and a collaboration that we have with not only the police department, but our fire department and our sheriff's department that covers some of our schools, assisting and supporting with patrols throughout the day and evening to assist us in maintaining security and support for the area in and around the schools for that week of March 14th through the 21st. I want to do a shout out to the Riverside Police Department, the Riverside Sheriff's Department, and the Fire Department for their collaboration, support, and their assistance in providing for the security during that period of time and on an ongoing basis through the time that we are currently experiencing. They've been great supporters of the district and great colleagues to work with. At the direction of Dr. Hanson and the Board of Education, we secured during the Wednesday of spring break the services of a private provider security firm that during the spring break and the weekends provided 24-hour security and 3 shifts of 8 hours each. That support continues with the security firm from the hours of 4 to 8 p.m., 4 p.m. to 8 a.m. And our resource officers who would normally be stationed at the high schools are providing the patrol during the daytime. They all also provided support for us during the device distribution today. So again, a shout out to the Riverside Police Department for their support in the situations that we're dealing with our sites during the closure of schools. At this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Dr. Jamie Angulo, who will walk us through the RUSD's learning plan.
Hello, yes, good evening, Dr. Hanson, President Alvey, and members of the board. We are excited to provide an overview of RUSD's plan for distance learning. So next slide. And then next slide. Thank you. So as soon as school closure was announced on Friday, March 13th, RUSD staff immediately worked on how we would fill the gap in instruction while we moved to an online learning platform. So staff worked over that weekend to ensure instructional materials for the week of the 16th and the week of the 30th were available digitally that Monday morning on the 16th and printed copies on Wednesday the 18th to be handed out at the lunch pickup site. And an at-home learning Google site was created to include these packets as well as additional parent, student, and teacher resources. Next slide. The same week, March 16th, A distance learning proposal was being developed and the team began working on what would be needed to execute the plan. So what is distance learning? A form of education whereby courses are delivered via the internet without face-to-face interactions between student and instructor. The plan was finalized on March 21st with the RUSD negotiations and bargaining team, which allowed us to reach out to teachers and staff to help us. So the week of March 23rd, approximately 200 teachers from different departments and sites came together to provide input and create the instructional units and online resources. We're very grateful to the support of all the staff who worked on the plan and to the board for the approval of the plan. Next slide. So knowing that students have varying levels of support and access, the distance learning plan had to allow for student and family flexibility. Many homes have students sharing devices while parents are working either remotely or out of the home. Our distance learning lessons are for 2 hours of student learning per content per week, which equates to about 10 hours of work for elementary and 12 hours for secondary. These lessons are asynchronous, which means that students can access them at their convenience. Next slide, please. So how will students be graded for this work? Due to variances in family structure, needs, locations, we know that not all students can participate in distance learning at the same level. So we've decided to hold students harmless during this time of closure. Trimester 2 and quarter 3 grades will be the final semester or end of the year grades, or they may be higher than that. Students will have the opportunity to improve their grade through distance learning. Next slide. We understand that moving into distance learning is going to be challenging, and we want to make sure that our students, staff, and families have the support that they need. So next slide. So knowing that students require differing amounts of supports to learn, here's some examples of the supports that are provided. Specialized units for all students, including students with disabilities, English learners, social, emotional, and academic counseling, online tutoring, live support through office hours. These supports include special education instruction and related services such as adaptive PE, occupational therapy, speech and language, as well as educationally related mental health services and behavior supports. The Individuals with Disability Education Act was not designed for a pandemic such as one we're currently experiencing. There is no baseline or past practice to build on or guide us. From the beginning, our focus has been and continues to be to deliver services to as many students as we reasonably can in the best way we know how. Teachers and service providers have designed work supportive of IEP goals and objectives for each student to the extent possible. They are reaching out to families to collaboratively determine what is appropriate based on the needs and circumstances of each student and their family in light of the current situation. Next slide. We encourage families to be involved with their children to the extent possible through this new learning. Our at-home learning website provides step-by-step guides for all virtual tools for families and students in English and Spanish, as well as video tutorials for virtual tools in English and Spanish. Teachers and technology help desk will be available for live support via appointments or office hours, and translation will be available at selected times. We will continue to add resources and fine-tune the plan as we work through the coming weeks. So next slide.
Excuse me,
Yes.
Mr. Lee may have a question. Mr. Lee?
I can wait until Jamie's done. I just had a question when she finishes up the virtual learning portion of the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so in order for distance learning to occur, devices are needed. And so device distribution started today and will continue the remainder of the week. The devices were sanitized, packaged before handed out, and we're just so appreciative of everyone's help in getting these devices out. We will continue to provide instructional material packets for those students and families who do not have access digitally. And next slide. So distance learning is not only new to students and families, it is also new to staff. Therefore, we have provided staff with multiple resources to build their skills in collaborating with students, families, and each other online. Asynchronous professional development opportunities were provided to allow for educator flexibility. We understand that our staff members are also caring for loved one at home. Some are supporting their own children through distance learning or caring for elderly loved ones. That's the training the staff needed to provide flexibility. So staff professional development began on March 30th, and staff has 2 weeks to learn about the distance learning tools and resources and plan for instruction, which will begin April 13th. Next slide. So, elementary and middle school students will be interacting with teachers and their learning materials through Google Classroom. This system will allow for teachers to post resources and assignments for students. Students will use the system to engage with the materials and complete assignments. Teachers will grade the assignments through the platform, which gets privately shared with each student. And there's also an option for parents or guardians to communicate with the teachers through this platform. High school will also use Google Classroom or Odysseyware. Most will use Google Classroom, but our Alt Ed and credit recovery programs are currently using Odysseyware, so we wanted to make sure they had a choice. And so Dr. Kong is going to review our staff resources page and our at-home learning site so you can get a brief overview of what the staff, parents, and students have access to. So this time I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kong and then come back for questions.
Good evening, Dr. Hansen, Board President Alavi, and members of the board. Tonight, I will be sharing a few of the resources that are available as part of our distance learning plan. Our distance learning plan was structured to support all stakeholders in our community. This week, we started offering asynchronous professional development for our RUSD staff. We created a single site for staff to access professional development, curriculum, and additional resources. This homepage is designed to support our staff as we shift to a distance learning model. I'd like to share with you the professional development that teachers are engaging in this week. Once we navigate to our PD page, we start with our table of contents, which links staff directly to PD pathways and digital tools. PD pathways are asynchronous professional development model that was structured to support all staff regardless of their prior knowledge with technology. Digital tools allow all staff to focus on specific tools they might want to learn more about to support distance learning and student engagement. As you scroll down the page, we also provide some guidance on the types of distance learning models, as well as a guideline for staff to follow during this time. PD pathways were designed to differentiate and support all staff in RUSD as we transition to a distance learning environment. We structured multiple levels of professional development to best suit the individual needs of all staff members in our district. Our pathways include the following: introductory, beginner, intermediate, advanced, administration, and Odysseyware. These specific pathways are designed for asynchronous professional development through a scaffolded process for staff to learn new skills, but also have a reference guide that allows for personalized PD. When we structured our resources, we made sure that the skills built upon each other to best support staff and build their confidence using these tools. To provide the greatest amount of support for our staff, our team has also curated and developed curriculum for all students. From the curriculum homepage, our RUSD staff can access their content and curriculum by grade level and content area. Staff can navigate to the specific curriculum and content they want from this page and even explore our digital citizenship curriculum. We've provided all staff multiple resources to best provide flexibility in their instruction. To support all students with distance learning, students will receive assignments, materials, and communication through Google Classroom. When students log in, they are able to quickly view upcoming assignments and open up their work directly from Classroom. Starting with the Stream tab, students can quickly see upcoming work. Clicking on View All allows students to filter their work by assigned, returned with grade, and missing work. Students are also able to directly open up their assignments by clicking on an assignment and clicking on View Details. They open up their documents directly from Google Classroom. They're able to complete the assignment, which automatically saves in their Google Drive, and turn in the assignment directly to their teacher. They can also request feedback by leaving a private comment that notifies the teacher. And they can also click on the Classwork tab, which allows them to navigate to different assignments based on the topics that they are focusing on. As students start working in Google Classroom, we also wanted to provide resources for our parents. From our RUSD at-home learning site, we have a wide range of resources that are now available. I want to highlight the resources that are available specifically to parents during this time. From the homepage, you can click on Parents to access the parent materials that are available. We have information available in English and Spanish and have a wide range of resources that we are continuing to build out on a weekly basis. As you scroll down the page, we have resources separated by elementary, middle, high schools, special education, English language development, distance learning tools, digital citizenship, social emotional learning, nutrition information, and community health. I want to reemphasize that this is a live site and that in addition to the provided resources, it is being updated to provide parents multiple resources to support their students with distance learning. Recognizing that learning will look very different as we transition to distance learning, we have a page for parents to be able to access the resources that many of our students will be utilizing with their teachers. From the Distance Learning Tools homepage, we are presented with two options, English and Spanish. You'll also see two videos which show parents how to enable closed captions in any YouTube video, but also provide automatic translations for a wide range of languages. We also have information for families who may need a secure at-home internet. Navigating to the English page, parents are able to access resources that show how students can log into their Chromebooks, but also a variety of supports to show what distance learning should look like. We have a parent's guide to Google Classroom presentation, as well as videos that show how students log in and navigate Classroom. In addition, there is a one-page handout, which is a quick reference guide on navigating Google Classroom, and we have parent resources on other digital tools such as Flipgrid, Google Meet, and Pear Deck. These same resources are being translated and shared under the Spanish Distance Learning Tools page. As we scroll down this page, you can access quick one-page handouts for our digital tools that are also provided in Spanish, as well as our Google Classroom presentation for parents, which has been translated. Recognizing that we need to support the social emotional well-being of our students, we also have a social emotional learning page. This page provides a collection of resources for strategies on how to best care for the emotional well-being of our families. Lastly, I'd like to conclude with our Community Health Resources page. We have gathered a wide variety of community and health resources that families may want to explore during this time, from utilities to medical services and behavioral health. All of the resources provided on the parent resource page will continue to be updated every 2 weeks. Please check back regularly to this site to access the most current up-to-date information as well as additional resources.
So thank you, Dr. Kong, for that overview. Again, I would like to thank all of the staff, the different divisions, special education, our curriculum instruction, ILE, just all of the different people that contributed and worked so many hours to make sure that this was available for all of our students, our English learners, our special education students, our just all of our students across the district. So again, thank you to all those involved, and I would be happy to answer any questions before I turn it over to Mr. Walker.
Thank you. Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Mrs. Alvey, and thank you, Dr. Angulo and Dr. Kong for the presentation. I have a few questions, but my first has to do with learning from some other districts that have already implemented some distance learning. So I was following the success of LA Unified School District in virtual learning, and they're having some struggles with about, I think about 1/3 of their high school students engaging with virtual learning. So I was just curious to know if there was any ideas in terms of how to ensure better engagement, learning from them, and there's been thoughts on what thoughts there's been. I know I had mentioned something about maybe gamifying it and having some kind of a reward system to encourage students to log in. But that is a little bit concerning to me, just making sure that students are engaging.
Yes, that's a great question. And we are working on a plan on how to first monitor and to keep track of students that are engaging and those that are not, so that we know at any given time or given week how many students are participating in distance learning in some way or another. So we're working on a plan to finalize how we're going to track that. And then second, what are we going to do with the students that we know are not engaging, which includes calling, starting with teachers, reaching out to students, and then expanding out, working with our administrators, our counselors, our support people, and using that. So that plan will be finalized within a few days and communicated out before we start distance learning on Monday. But we are definitely working on that.
My other question, again, this website is super user friendly. Seems like pretty easy to navigate from my use of it early on. However, I still worry about our kids, especially our TK3 kids, who may not have somebody at home that can turn the computer on. Like I know my daughter, even though she's got her mom and I at home to help her navigate, if we don't do it for her and show her where to click and where to go, she's not going to have access to these resources. So I know this is an impossible question, but like, what are we going to do for those kids, especially our little ones, to make sure, again, that I feel like they're at a place, especially those kinder kids, where they were really struggling all year to learn the alphabet and learn their sight words and learn their sounds. It was just starting to click when we had to close school. So what are we going to do to make sure that those kids don't regress and at least retain what they have? I mean, at this point, I don't think any of us are even expecting them to progress with the curriculum, even though that would be ideal. I think just how do we maintain what they've already learned?
So especially at the younger grades, just as you mentioned, I know many teachers and the principals have been involved, but many teachers have been reaching out using other means like Class Dojo, Remind app, that it's just something off the phone where a student can click off of and start engaging in some of those pieces. And in fact, at preschool's been using that all year long with how to contact and have students do things at home. But those are definitely pieces that we are trying to be mindful of, knowing that a kindergartner or a TK is probably not going to be able to pull out the computer or Chromebook and just log right in. So it's trying to be very user-friendly to the students and the parents, and being creative on how to access that. So,
all right, yeah, I think we're all learning together. So my last question was, and I heard it from one of our teacher leaders at RCTA, but I also even saw it on the social media platform next door from one of our teachers, that they surprisingly don't have internet at home. And I guess, not everybody has that, even if they have the ability to get it. So are we confirming with all of our teachers and our support staff that's assisting with this virtual learning that they have a device themselves at home and that it's connected to the internet?
Yes, but I believe Mr. Dunlap is on here too, and I would ask Mr. Dunlap if you'd like to respond to that.
Actually, Jeannie, it's Kylie. I might be best to support Steve in that answer, if that's okay. So yes, Mr. Lee, what we are doing is we have been working individually. It's somewhat of a one-to-one basis in working with the teachers to make that determination. We have provided, as you did allude to, a lot of the different free opportunities that could be accessible to them. But then those teachers who are having different situations, they are reaching out to their site administrators, and we're working one-to-one on them, with them, excuse me. And as for our classified employees, we haven't gotten there yet with regards to what they would need internet access if you're speaking to for the distance learning plan, like instructional assistants, but we have been providing them, who are the ones working at home, via remotely with MiFis and the Wi-Fi's when needed. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Lee, are your questions done?
For now, yeah.
Okay, Dr. Farouk.
Thank you, President Ali. This is extremely impressive. First of all, just again, want to really commend staff. Just the comprehensive, thoughtful nature of this and the amount of time put into it is really fantastic. My first question is, and this is kind of a complicated situation, but we want to try to figure out ways to get our most vulnerable populations to participate in giving them access to technology and resources. But I think one of the underlying issues that is harder to wrap ourselves around is that people are living in environments at home that are just sometimes just not conducive to learning. And especially with the shelter in place situation, there's going to be a higher propensity for abusive and very problematic circumstances to be expounded even further. And so I know that that to some extent is beyond our scope, but the reason I bring this up is, are we consulting with county social service departments and others on strategies on how we can potentially make sure that those people are aware of, how they can get support, even if it's outside of the scope of what the school district itself can provide? That's my first question.
So yes, thank you for your question. We have a number of social and emotional support resources on our website, but to your specific question on reaching out to the county, I don't know if a lot of our resources are coming from a variety of places. We didn't develop all the resources. We got them and kind of put them in a particular place, and we are referring people to the website frequently. So I don't know if Mr. Walker or Kirsten would like to jump in on that one.
Yes, thank you, Jamie. Dr. Farouk, we discussed this recently with Dr. Hansen in a cabinet meeting, and we are looking into creating a link on our main webpage where resources are there for the district to go to the FRC site and provide additional resources that will outreach to agencies and supports that are in the community around and further in the area that you have discussed. So any of the Riverside components that would provide for supports in the community of Riverside, we are going to put on the FRC page and then put a link on our main page so that individuals can get to that information.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. But the underlying point I was trying to make was, I know that we have the links in the social emotional page, and I think that's fantastic. But I think just having some strategic conversations with those county service providers that are dealing with these issues, because the school district can play an important role in addressing these things. And I just wanted to make sure that that kind of strategic communication is happening between not just providing just the links and information itself.
Dr. Farouk, this is David, if I could jump on here, Mrs. Alavi.
Yes.
Every Tuesday morning at 10, I am part of a county-wide check-in meeting from 10 to 11. You do have folks from RCOE, you have folks from the county, and you have a medical report, you have a finance report, you have a mental health report, you have all these reports, and they have asked us to push out on our own social platforms things such as the rent relief or the job unemployment, those types of resources. And so we do have that regular meeting that happens every Tuesday. I know that Mrs. Alavi joined me early on, but those are under the direction actually of our executive director of our chamber, who also pulls in, again, not just city folks, but county folks. And so we are having those conversations every week. And I can give the board more of an update on the minutes that are shared with us within 24 hours as those types of calls are being taken place.
Thank you, Dr. Hansen. One more question on distance learning. And I think maybe this is a little bit premature, but just thinking, outward, there's a lot of innovation. And I know we've had distance learning, obviously, with the school district already. But in light of the fact that we've built up this infrastructure and we've done more extensive professional development for teachers, is this is this something we can think about how we can incorporate this even when things get normalized to enhance the delivery of education and have more options and flexibility for students with different needs?
Yeah, we've talked about this. I think that when we do get back to normal, whatever that normal is, it's going to be a new normal, Dr. Fruch, because of all the things that we are learning. Simply this type of a meeting, not that board meetings will always be on Zoom or virtual, but we can utilize the resources that we've learned, keep applying it in the classroom, and of course, we will take the best of both worlds and be that much better as a school district, as in his profession overall. I know that Ryan is on this line. He's been kind of quiet. Ryan, you've been very deep in this distance learning, and you're plugged in with folks on the county. Would you jump in here, please, and share your thoughts?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Hanson. Dr. Fruch, you asked a great question, and all the questions are, but the concept about reaching all of our students, it is something that we are watching those districts who are out in front of us, and something that we are closely monitoring. The only two other perspectives I would get that are being shared, we're in a partnership that is collaborative between both San Bernardino County and Riverside County that is utilizing some of the structures around PBS and KVCR. So we have on our currently on our parent resource page, if for some reason the platform we are working within parents and students is not working for them, they do have another option. Those resources are all posted for parents. They're all posted for students to find, where they can go on. And as Mr. Lee talked about those routines in that TK, kindergarten, first grade times, they have programming geared towards pre-K that are available on cable resources. So that's another resource that we have for our families that hasn't been mentioned. And the second that I think is unique to Riverside is this idea about synchronous and asynchronous. Just our district's approach was trying to give as much flexibility to not only students and families, but to staff. So if you are at home and you are caring for little brothers or little sisters and you could not log into a bell schedule because of the family situation that you are in, that's not going to count against you. You're able to log in when you have time, complete the work that has been given to you, and maintain that learning in a non-traditional setting that we are very proud of. So we will be monitoring closely. We will be working with all of our support staff. And if we have students that are not checking in, we are developing systems to make sure we check in on them to both make sure they're doing okay and find out how we can get them connected to school. So we'll bring back, after we launch on Monday, we'll have updates for the board on how that's going. Thank you.
Great.
Dr. Lewis.
Dr. Fruch, did you finish?
I have other questions, but because they're not related to distance learning, I'll defer to my.
Well, let me circle back to you then. I'll call Ms. Locke Dawson.
Hi, thank you, Mrs. Alavi, and to staff. This is fantastic. You guys have done an amazing job. I don't know if this is appropriate to ask this, but it's about the mental health resources, and is this something somebody can answer just with respect to some of the resources we're providing? Do you want me to ask that now?
That would be fine. We are still providing supports through our SAP program, as well as our psychologists are ramping up for going online to provide the supports that have always been in place for students in the school district. There will be individual sessions, there will be small group sessions, and there'll be whole class sessions. Both Robert Diaz, a coordinator for educationally related mental health services, and in charge of the psychologists, and Dr. Shen's, our director for social emotional well-being, have been collaborating and working with our staff in order to address some of the issues that present themselves, not only during the school year, but now even more so with the anxiety and the separation that occurs in a situation where they're stuck at home. So they're working diligently, not only on the issues associated with Go Guardian, but with lessons and with supports that will be in place beginning on Monday. I can certainly share information more specifically and get that from Dr. Shantz and send that to you if you would like.
Yeah, specifically, I met with a group of students, or virtually met with a group of high school seniors from multiple schools throughout the district on Friday afternoon, and one of our high school counselors, and that was something they were requesting, was a link or something where they could do either one-on-one counseling or have access to somebody just to talk to, because I think this is you said really stressful.
And there are other resources that go beyond us, both from the county and from the state. CDE has actually a peer line as well as a professional line, with it broken up into different areas of if you're feeling lonely, if you're anxious, if you are a victim of abuse. There's lines where students can call and get support. So it's not just from RUSD supports that they will have access to, but we'll be pushing out that information as well.
Yeah, because I do, we do have our own peer program, which is, it would be really neat if somehow they could continue. And I'm not exactly sure what that would look like, but I do know that our students are much more willing to open up to fellow students. So that might be a way to even start some group, group discussions moderated by an adult. I think that would be good. So,
and I will discuss that with Dr. Chance.
All right, thanks very much. Appreciate it. Good job, you guys. Wonderful.
Thank you. Mr. Lee.
Thanks again. Again, I want to thank Dr. Hansen and the staff for hosting the community meetings with parents on a weekly basis and keeping everybody up to date. And in light of that, I'm just wondering, with all these great resources, I wonder if we take that same approach and maybe schedule some webinars for parents if they want to be able to access some of these resources with their kids or families, for that matter, so that they better know how to navigate the resources and how to guide their student or their kids through them. Not sure if there's any thought about that. And then on the social emotional aspect, I'm thinking for our staff. I know we have some resources for staff in providing support on an ongoing basis, both from maybe a licensed therapist perspective, but also just from a professional development perspective. In particular, I'm thinking about like Diana Twist. And I don't know if we're utilizing her at this time. I know we're doing a million different things, but just making sure that our staff is still getting the support that they need, because if their job wasn't already hard enough to teach students in a classroom, now they have to teach students online. So making sure that our staff is getting the support that they need from either a standpoint where they can go talk to somebody if they're having some social or emotional issues, or just from a professional development where they need a coach to talk through those things.
And Mr. Lee, just for your information, Diana Twist is pushing out a whole series of activities and opportunities for our staff beginning on Monday. And also there will be supports from our chaplains that have been partnering with us in regard to providing supports to our staff, as well as other resources that are being put in place.
That's great. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. Dr. You have other questions? Oh, sorry, Dr. Lewis, go ahead.
That's okay. My apologies. I just wanted to clarify with Mr. Lee, if under the parent resources, and I know Dr. Kong highlighted it quickly in the video, but there are several different tutorials that are on the parent section under our resources that will walk parents through A, what their students are experiencing, but B, how they do it themselves as moms and dads. They are how-to videos, how to log in, how to monitor, how to get connected, things of that nature. So if there's other ideas or suggestions, please let us know.
Yeah, and just a comment on that. And I think that's fantastic. And maybe we just play it by ear and see how it goes, because I know those videos are really great. I just am thinking about in my other career with my business. We have webinars that are available to our employees 24/7 as well, and the content and the information is all there, but they don't access them as often as they should. But if we provide a live opportunity for them to engage in that content and kind of take them through step by step on how to use those resources, I tend to get a little bit better engagement. And then it also offers the opportunity for questions. So again, I know how thin everybody's running right now and bandwidth is limited. So I'm not suggesting that this has to be done right away, but maybe based upon if we have a way to know how many people are clicking on our links and how many people are watching the tutorials. And if that seems effective, then let's keep going with it. But If not, maybe we think about pivoting and having some live, either Google Hangout or Zoom calls where parents can interact with us or with the team live and see it firsthand as we walk through it, and then be able to ask questions in the chat.
Got it. Thank you. We will definitely report back and let you know how it's going.
Thank you. Dr. Farouk, did you have a few questions you wanted to ask?
I'll defer to staff because I don't know if the presentation is almost finished. I can hold off until the end, whatever is helpful to staff.
Staff, are we about done with the presentation?
If we could have the next slide, we'll continue. Okay, as you can see on this back one slide. As you can see on the slide, the communication outreach plan is identified in the audiences that we have reached out to, including not only our staff, students, and families, but community, the leaders in the community, the governmental agencies, and the press. And on the right are some different types of communication that we have been utilizing. With that said, I want to let people know that communication outreach has been a team effort since the start of the school closures. Best practices in crisis communication is to have a dedicated centralized team focused on important messages for employees and families, and to provide reassurances in the actions that the district is taking on and doing. We meet regularly to monitor the situation, focused on the consistency of the message, are proactive and transparent, and provide regular stream of information to employees, families, and the community. I want to offer my heartfelt thanks to my colleagues on the team, especially Dr. Jackie Perez and Mrs. Kirsten Frosto, as well as our district translators and the communications department, who are diligently sending out the post and posting these important messages. We are working with our partners and other agencies such as the Riverside County Office of Education, the Riverside Department of Public Health, our law enforcement partners, the Guatemalan Consulate, and the City of Riverside. And I don't think anybody would be surprised to find out that we have provided over 130 different points of contact through various platforms since we had to start to deal with the COVID-19 issue. I'm very proud of the actions of the comms team. So with that, I would like to call upon Mays Kakish, our Chief Business Officer, to go on and cover the slides related to the budget.
May I ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, Mrs. Allaway. Just before you go on, Mr. Walker, and thank you for that. And I'm sure you're absolutely right about everyone pulling together. Going back to a couple of items that I want to comment on. I agree with Mr. Lee on the webinars. If you'll look at what the National School Boards Association is already doing, and a lot of subjects, and I sent one to Dave today that it was conflicting with this particular meeting, but some very good things, and on emotional stress and things like that we should be taking advantage of. There, as Dr. Farouk and I reported when we came back last year from their meeting, it was much more comprehensive on global things than just what we find at Cal State. So I hope we'd look at that. And if we do these webinars, I would just encourage, if we could, to Dr. Hanson, do where we can to involve teachers in being a part of them about how to use this or that. They're the ones I talk to are frustrated at home and want to do something. And of course they're doing their kids, but they'd like to do more. I'm very pleased that we're doing something with Diana Twist and all of that. But there was an article in the, I believe it was the National School Board Association. I was reading it yesterday. And it talked about that, as Mrs. Allaway was sharing with Freddie, that this is a defining time of his generation, really of our generation and all of this. And we know it's going to be bad, that there really is going to be a lot more, because it's now more open, PST that will start before post, that is going to affect everyone. But for the nation that we're concerned with, we should be getting to think about and just research what others are doing. I'm glad to hear from Dr. Ryan that we're monitoring all those things. But that is going to be a real situation, whether they're little people, very little people. People are going to die. People are going to, your neighbors are going to, it's just going to be horrific. And I know that I personally am I have to catch myself not falling into depression over it and just thinking about it. We need to be prepared to help our employees and the charges we have. And so I hope we will begin to look at those things. And just lastly, I wanted to ask, and don't have to do it right now, David, but y'all were going to check into if there was a memorial service for the young man at EOC that took his life last week, and just stay abreast of me on that if you can. I hope I haven't missed it. Thank you, Mrs. Alabi.
Thank you. Please go ahead with the presentation. Ms. Kakish?
Thank you and good evening again. So if I can have the next slide, please. What we wanted to do is give you a picture of what's going on at the state level when it comes to the budget. And I'm not sure if a lot of our audience know that the components of the general fund budget is really dependent on personal income tax, sales tax, and corporate tax. And that is the $140 billion of general fund is that three components. So if you look at the personal income tax being 70% of that, and out of that $100 billion, $30 billion is dependent on capital gains. You can tell from the condition of the market that that dollar amount will not materialize. And what is the impact of that? We really have a guess in the next slide, but we don't have an exact number. But if you also have heard the deferment of the deadlines for the taxes and having it go from April 15th to July 15th or the middle of July, that will create, besides the fact that we'll have shortage in the revenue, that will create a cash flow issue, as the state was anticipating these funds in this current year, and we might not receive majority of it until July, which would put us into the next fiscal year. So make sure that we, and basically the bottom line, I'm sorry, can you go back to the slide that you were on, Jeff? The previous slide. So the bottom line is that there is no scenario. No, there's the next one, please. Okay, so what Bob Plantner have communicated to us, and he used to work for School Services of California and has since had his own company. And he's like the guru of the revenue at the state level and how it pertains to Proposition 98 and the K-12 education budget. There is no scenario where the COVID-19 impact does not reduce general fund revenues. And that's basically what we have to anticipate. So the next slide. They do believe that the shortfall for this year would be approximately $5 billion, and the budget year, another $5 billion. And so the main components of the $5 billion for 1920 school year is the fact that we will not materialize as much in capital gains and the deferment of the revenue of the income tax. The $5 billion for next year, the components of it is on this slide. There's many initiatives that started in the January budget, like educator workforce investment grants, workforce development grants, teacher residency grants, credentialing program grants, and then opportunity grants and community school partnership. Several of these, what we're hearing, they will not materialize in the budget based on the revenue shortfall. In our district, we basically did not really account for all of these new initiatives. At the time they were communicated to us in January, we didn't know how the requirements will be regarding spending these dollars, and therefore we didn't really add them in the budget right away in order for us to be ready when they have any strings attached or any matching funds that is required to be budgeted for. So we will have an impact, but it won't be to the level of this impact because we did not account for these. The next slide, please. When it comes to federal relief packages, I just wanted to highlight the component of 13.5 billion of the package that was authorized by the president. will be formula grants to the states, and 90% of that will be funds directly to local educational agencies and school districts. And so that will be to help us with the response that we're having for any of the educational technology support that we're doing for distance learning, meals, or any of effects on the long-term closure. And $3 billion will go directly to the governors. Each will receive that amount and be able to allocate it at their discretion. So we'll find out how the grants, and once we get more clarity on the grants, we'll be able to give you an update on that. The next slide. So for 1920, the current year budget, our challenges right now is estimating what estimated actuals is an accounting term, but it really, the definition of it, what will we end up with as revenues, expenditures, and the ending fund balance? That would be our financials. And at this point, usually up to this point for the last 5 years, as you have experienced, we're very close to what we project with what we actually end up with. And the difference was very minimal. This is not the year that the difference will be minimal, but it's also totally uncertain because some of the revenue shortfall will be impacted, and also some of the expenditures that we're planning to do, we might be able to generate some savings in it. And so because of all of these uncertainties, we will have a hard time estimating actuals to the level that you are used to seeing from the business department. When it comes to salary savings, we are projecting little savings in the overtime area, for example, on a regular basis, or any extra duty that would have been on time cards in the last quarter of the year. But we're also, as you know, will experience increase in other areas of salaries as we are authorizing and reaching agreements with our bargaining units with regards to provide additional compensation, whether it's for the frontline workers or whether it's for a phone stipend. All of these are yet to be finalized. Supplies, we will also be looking at some savings there, although that would also be offset with other type of expenditures. So for example, all the securities that we have during our evenings and on the weekends for 24 hours each day. We've also experienced other type of expenditures that we're able to do as a result of COVID-19 necessities. And so some of the savings in that area will be offset by a different type of expenditures. And then as far as services and contracts, we are looking to continue with all of our contract payments to our partners that otherwise would have been expected to provide those services. One thing that we're doing as a collaboration, we're making sure that the intent of the governor with this order is to reduce the impact on the economy. And so we are requiring that we have agreements with our partners for no layoffs. So for example, as you know, we have a big contract with our first student bus company. And we are happy to continue our payments when it comes to labor to make sure that they don't lay off any of the drivers. As we are anticipating, when we go back, we come back to the same level of service when it comes to transportation. So that's the example of how we're dealing with all of our partners and our contractors to make sure that we don't create layoffs. Another thing that we're trying to do is also some language when it comes to them receiving any help from the federal government through the stimulus package. When it comes to capital outlay, that's where we budget all of our construction contracts. And we will be bringing to you, as a result of the order by the governor, that the local agency has to declare what's essential. And for us, construction in our school sites with Measure O projects and other funds, such as community facilities districts or redevelopment dollars, it is essential. And we would like to take advantage of making sure that we have the authority to proceed. All of our contractors are abiding with all of the orders from the governor, and we'll be able to continue with bids and authorizing those construction. So we will be bringing you a resolution in the next board meeting to declare construction projects in Riverside Unified School District as essential, and therefore we will have minimal impact on the budget when it comes to capital outlay. This footnote at the bottom, just to let you know, the $13.5 billion that I mentioned earlier will be generating $670,000+ to our district, and that is $17.38 per ADA. In the next slide. Thank you, Jeff. When it comes to budget year, we will be bringing in May a preliminary budget for your review and a public hearing, and then adoption in June. When it has 4 different components. Local control funding formula, the LCFF, is dependent on cost of living adjustment, enrollment, and ADA. ADA, which is the average daily attendance. Cost of living adjustment that we have published by budget. What they do is calculate this as of December of 2019, and then they'll use it for the budget for this year. So it's likely that that number won't change. What will change is the ability to fund that cost of living adjustments. And we believe that that cost of COLA will not be funded at the full level, if partial, and there's also a chance of having it be zero funded for this year. So we're continuing to monitor that and be prepared for that. Cost of living adjustment to Riverside Unified School District is approximately $8 to $9 million to our budget. Enrollment projections, if you remember, we talked about that. We had used conservative numbers based on projecting these in 3 different methods. We also hired a consultant, Decision Insight, to validate the numbers, and they were able to give us 2 numbers, conservative and a liberal number, as to prepare for facilities. And their numbers that's conservative is right around the numbers that we used in our second interim report, and therefore we'll probably be leaving our projections alone when it comes to enrollment projections. For ADA, we are, as of February 29th will be our P2. Our P2, which is the period 2 attendance, usually is as of April 15th. It has changed by an order of Department of Education to February 29th, which is right before the closure. And I believe that we will stay within the same percentage that we were predicting for ADA. When it comes to state, federal, and local dollars, we just wanted to give heads up to all of our school sites and our departments that we will be budgeting most of the revenue from any other source at a 90% level of this year's level, just because we believe if we are going to experience cuts, chances are there'll be cuts at the state level and at the federal level. And for STRS and PERS increases, we actually had a meeting today with both of our local legislators to continue to have them advocate for us to delay the increases. And to us, STRS and PERS increases for next year is approximately $4 million. And so that will help offset some of the decline in the revenue. Next slide, please. I think we're at the end of the presentation. Okay, so for expenditures, sorry. Salaries and will continue to use the same formulas. We're adhering to our contract language and continuing to staff for teachers and other areas at the budget staffing formulas. For benefits, there will be increases to STRS and PERS, as I mentioned earlier, but we are continuing to advocate to delay those. And supplies and services, we are anticipating that much of the carryover, if there is any carryover in any of the areas, we will be looking to see how we can move forward with those. And any carryover that will be authorized will probably be based on case-by-case scenario and authorization by cabinet. And then again, construction projects will be moving as planned. And I think that's the end of the presentation, and we can stop for questions.
Thank you, Mays. I have a question. I was wondering if you were at all concerned about the cash flow issue before we get the federal money trickling down. Is there going to be a gap that we're going to have to fill, or are you confident that that'll be taken care of?
For this year, I believe with some of the carryovers that we would anticipate from some of the savings and the fact that our fund balance still healthy enough, we have not spent a lot of our restricted dollars when it comes to redevelopment dollars yet. As between now and June, I believe we are going to be okay. Whether the state is going to send us all of their payments on time, that's still to be determined, because it's specifically because of the income tax deadlines being deferred to July. A lot of the funds would have gotten to the state by April 15th, except for payment plans, and now they will not until July for the most part, and that's going to create a cash flow at the state level. But I believe we can mitigate it with how we're ending this year with some of the carryover that we will have.
Thank you. Mr. Lee, you have a question.
Thank you. Thank you, Mays, for that. As you mentioned, we did have a conversation with Senator Roth and Assembly Member Medina today, discussing some of our concerns about how they'll impact our budget. So in particular, the $8 million COLA that's built into next year's budget, as well as the, I think, $4 million for increased retirement costs that are due, so $12 million. And the fact that we cut, I think, 11 million last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, we're looking at another potential decrease of $12 million. And the fact that we've already kind of gone through the LCAP process and submitted that to the county, I mean, what would be our next steps, and at what point would we start examining any potential cuts to the budget? And also knowing that this downturn likely will impact the budget for more than just next year, probably next couple of years.
So our next step will be waiting for the May revision of the state budget, and that's usually what we would finalize the budget with for adoptions at our level. As you know, we adopt our budgets before the state actually adopts their budget. And usually they do it right at that moment. So in May revision, what we believe will happen is that's when we're going to hear a little bit about whether they can seeing the shortfall. In May, we also will have a better picture of all of the expenditures that we're doing right now that are not finalized. Like, for example, how much is the shortfall in the child nutrition area? We're providing meals, but we're providing them at a much lower level than what we usually do. And up to this moment, the federal government under the National School Lunch Program has not given any waivers on those. And so we might be losing some funding in child nutrition. Once we find out exactly the gap there, we'll be able to offset to see what we can support them with from general fund. But we have been working proactively, not knowing what happened. We have started a financial stabilization process last year, cut $11.3 million, and we're able to balance our budget over a 5-year period. And so I do believe that we will have a full year of a plan to be able to do any of the mitigations that we will have to do with cuts. I believe we have the next year as a budget year to be able to use to come up with the plan, and then implementation in the second year of the budget cycle. So as we present you the budget in May, it'll be a new 3-year budget, right? So it'll be 2021, and then the second year 21-22, and then 22-23. And in that 21-22 is when we will implement any of the reductions and the mitigations that we would come up with. So the year of 2021 will be a plan year. We'll be able to engage a stakeholder group that will be included of all of our stakeholders, and bring you in similar process that we've done before, bring you all of the options that are doable, and be able to start finalizing some of these decisions. My guess is many of those decisions will take collaborations with our bargaining units, and it would also affect majority of our expenditures overall. There is, though, based on our discussion with the legislators today, there is a lot of commitment from the governor on keeping our budget at the same level. And if that happens, if they don't treat us as usual, where Proposition 98 is the cap for school districts, and they actually take the advocacy that we were talking about today, that is a minimum guarantee, and they can't continue to use that as a cap, especially that we have had our students for the last quarter of the year with the services to be able to come back. This is to the best of our ability to get back into the same level of knowledge that they had left. So all I say is there's so many things that are not known right now, but there's also a lot of good. Our superintendent, the state superintendent, and the governor to K-12 education.
Thank you. Mays, thank you. You're breaking up a little bit now. Your sound is breaking up, so I'm going to just move along on the presentation. Is there any more presentation to be had?
No, that was it.
Okay. Dr. Farouk, do you have one question before we move on?
I have a couple questions that are general. So my first question is, I just want to get confirmation. My understanding is that this is the case, but that for all of our employees, the essential workers, that we're all adhering to the county's direction regarding, covering your face at all times and all of that. I just want to get confirmation that is the case, that all of the different guidelines are being followed with our essential employees.
Ms. Ibarra, would you like to address Dr. Farouk's question, please?
Yes, sure. Dr. Farouk, I can share with you that based on all conversations and briefings that I have had and been a part of with both cabinets and the managers overseeing the employees in those areas, they are following what those current directives are. As you know, those directives have changed. And so with that being said, we're currently under an order for all Riverside residents to wear face coverings, which started this past weekend. And we have since obtained well over 800 facial coverings, shall I say. Those range between masks, bandanas, large cloth napkins that can be used as bandanas to provide that coverage. But employees, whether essential or not, are to be wearing any form of face covering based on that order. It even specifically says in the order that the essential needs to wear it to their place of employment. We have been working with both of our associations so that they know that, and they are working to also support us in that.
Kylie,
yes.
let me just jump in here. I know Kylie mentioned the number 800 facial coverings or masks. One of the advantages being in this county, there's a lot of sharing. And Val Verde had a whole lot of masks, and they just under Tim's leadership today, Walker, Val Verde just donated our school district 1,000 additional masks on top of the already 800. And so thankful to Michael McCormick, the school board over there in Val Verde, for reaching out and making that kind gesture for RUSD.
And Dr. Hanson, if I could give an update with John Davis, our lead nurse, and the supportive principals going into their emergency supplies. We are in possession of over 3,000 masks at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you for that information. A couple more questions. So it's my understanding the governor did a recent executive order about giving priority of childcare and preschool registration to essential workers. Is there anything we're doing about getting the information and how we're going to process those kinds of policies?
Tim, are you able to address this question on pre-registration?
Certainly, we're exploring registration going forward. A recent meeting of cabinet has us looking at the moment of trying to centralize registration at the CRC for elementary and possibly have a single school at the secondary address issues of drops and withdrawals, as well as enrollment issues. So we're in the process of exploring that going forward. Siblings have always got priorities when it comes to transfers, and our workers, our staff here in the Riverside Unified School District, anytime we go through a transfer process or address issues of Dr. Hanson has always had a focus on keeping kids together at schools. So that's how we're addressing some of those issues. We certainly will take into consideration anything that is brought out by the state as far as providing for our essential workers who are on the front lines and providing that work that is so necessary for us to continue with the running of the school and the delivery of nutritious meals to our community.
What I'm referring to in the governor's recent executive order actually applies to essential employees for the whole state. It's not specific to just the school district. So and again, it has to do with preschool registration, childcare specifically. So I just want to make sure that we're, aware of that, and we're planning to incorporate that.
Absolutely.
My last question is, I know obviously, whether it was the public comments and all of us in general, the graduation has been coming up a lot. I know we don't have the answer specifically, but just for the sake of the public, can somebody just explain the thought process and the timeframes and considerations of what we're having to take into account with as we're reaching decisions on how we're going to handle all that?
Dr. Farouk, I think I mentioned to the board, but our next board meeting, April the 21st, 2 weeks from now, we will have a full detailed report on how we're going to handle all the end of the year activities, whether it's graduations or promotions or awards nights. In talking to the county, they are looking for some type of consistency throughout the county. And so I think what you're finding most folks doing right now is planning something virtually. However, plan B is if we are allowed to come back later. What makes it problematic is when we have our governor that states he doesn't even know if professional sports will come back this year, the startup of the baseball or the football season. And if we can't come back together, if we don't plan virtually and just think that we're going to be back together in August or September and we can't, that would be a bad thing as well. And so we're putting both plans together. We're going to plan virtually up front with our regular graduations in May, but we also have that contingent plan to be able to, if we do come back together, pull something off later. But we'll have a full report on that at the April 21st board meeting. And at the 23rd community meeting that Thursday, we'll also give a full report to the community as to what the plans are.
Thank you. And the main thing was just that, like the comment you just made about that the county is wanting us to have that consistency. That kind of consideration, I think it's important for the public to be aware of that, irrespective of what we end up presenting.
Yeah, Dr. White is in regular phone call with the superintendent for the county of San Bernardino, with San Diego, with Orange County. And they're working hard as county superintendents to make sure that we are somewhat consistent when it comes to these types of things. Of course, every individual district has their own personal unique traditions and styles that people may recognize or do, but right now we're all walking down that virtual path. And even our very own Dr. Kaiser, we were in a call with him earlier this week, and we brought up summer school and we brought up graduations. He says, we'll address that the 1st of May. Right now it's closure to the end of 30th. We're coming up to the peak in our area in this county. And so as we get further along, we will have more directions from our county leaders. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Dr. Hanson.
Can we go back to the presentation?
I think that was the end of the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions by board members? No? Okay, then I will address agenda items for future meetings. I think Dr. Farouk brought up graduation and all that. That's going to be at a future meeting. Are there any others? Okay, then I'm going to close the meeting in memory of Arlo Gard, who worked in RUSD for 33 years and was referred to many as coach at Poly High School and was one of my teachers, and Jordan Strumwasser, who was a student at the Riverside Virtual School. And hearing no other issues, we will now call the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and stay safe.